On today's show, the rumor mill of the offseason keeps on churning, and of course, it keeps on churning with the always entertaining San Diego Padres, whether or not Corbin Burnes could be a target, whether or not any of the other top flight starters could be options. Ha-Seong Kim going to the Dodgers and answering some of your questions concerning Jackson Merrill versus Paul Skenes, the Dodgers stuff all over again, all sorts of things to get into. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Padres, your daily San Diego Padres podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to an edition of Locked On Padres podcast, which is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day for Monday, November 18th. As always, I'm your host with sometimes occasionally, but certainly not always the most, Javier Reyes. You can follow me on Twitter /X at Javipeno, Javiipeno, and also the newly kind of viral-ish app lately on Blue Sky. You can follow me on there as well at Javipeno, and also the show account at LO_Padres. If you're unfamiliar with some of my other baseball-related work, it is ramping back up. First of all, I have a piece on Moneyball that's coming out, and also go check out my stuff at justbaseball.com. Fantastic website, especially the newsletter. But for today's episode, guys, enough about me. What a sluggish kind of intro. What can I say? Weird weekend. Not a bad weekend. Let me be very clear, but a weird weekend. I don't know. There's something weird's going on in the air. You guys smell it? I feel like we're due for a big signing. I feel like something's going to happen. Maybe a trade? I don't know. I think we're in for a good offseason. We're going to be talking about that as well as answering some of your guys' questions and comments and just going over kind of the latest things in Padre land, some of the latest rumors and what have you. It's going to be a fun show. Today's episode, guys, download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB because they are one of our sponsors today for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. But again, download Game Time today. What time is it? It is Game Time. Get some little discounts on your ticket purchases and what have you. Let us begin, ladies and gentlemen. The first thing I want to talk about is just a couple of reports that we were getting from over the weekend. We didn't get a lot of in the weeds, hardcore Padres reporting, and I don't think that we're going to for a while. Let me be very clear. I do think that we're going to have to wait until the winter meetings, which, don't get me wrong, will be here before you know it. We're 7 days away from Thanksgiving? Guys, we're you know what I mean? We're good. December's right around the corner, so it's going to start ramping up more and more. And I know that it's a little bit frustrating for viewers and listeners of this show and baseball fans anywhere that the rumor mill for baseball can be really frustrating because you'll hear a rumor and then you'll only see if it's substantiated or not 3 months later. I understand that, but I actually think that we could get some signings in the winter meetings, or at least get some trades or what have you. Garrett Crochet, as he going to the Phillies, that's a big piece because that means the Phillies would then not necessarily be as incentivized to go starting pitching hunting, all sorts of stuff. One thing from this weekend that I noticed was that someone predicted that Corbin Burnes could potentially be a fit for the Padres. In fact, it was our boy, Jim Bowden. He's not actually our boy, but I'm just bringing him up. I believe brought him up as a potential destination fit for the Padres. I want to talk about him really quickly just because he's kind of a player that we haven't discussed at all, and considering that this is a team that very much needs to go for a starting pitcher, right? It's a little bit weird that I haven't brought him up. And the reason I haven't brought him up is because, it's Chad Jennings and Sam Blum, by the way. They predicted that there was 9 teams that could potentially be landing spots for the Padres or landing spot for Burnes, and the Padres have been one of them. Now let's talk about that a little bit. And let's talk about just in general the top flight starters for the Padres. The projections for Corbin Burnes range from anywhere from 6 to 7 years to around $200 million for him. And that is what The Athletic currently has, 7 years to 17 for Mr. Corbin Burnes. I don't know, y'all. I don't know. I just think that this is too big of a contract, I think, for the Padres right now. And I do think that while I'm optimistic that they're going to spend, we just don't know enough about what exactly direction the Padres are going to go. Because as we talked about, when I alluded to this, when we were talking about Manny Machado, his player review, and whether or not you'd rather have Matt Chapman, which, by the way, nobody responded. You guys really let me down. I wanted to hear your thoughts on the question I posited regarding whether or not you'd rather have Matt Chapman at this point. I think that with the Pods, you still have to remember that they're going to have some ascending salaries, right? Xander Bogaerts is going to be the same, about, I think it's $27 million a year. But then with Manny Machado, he's going to get up there to 40. Tatis is going to get up there as well. So you have to take that into account too. You have to take into account that at some point they're going to want to extend Jackson Merrill. That's another AAV to throw onto the payroll. You have to take into account that you're still going to have Yu Darvish and you're still going to have Joe Musgrove, that there's a lot of expensive players on this team. So throwing everything at another player, I just think would be a mistake. And I feel like it would also be a little bit kind of go against what we were hoping for. And I know before everybody brings up that I've been really bullish on potentially bringing back Blake Snell, let me just be very clear. Part of that is also because I just love Blake Snell. But I should say not even part of majority of it, it's just I love Blake Snell. But when it comes to this sort of situation, do you really want to blow everything on another player, especially when you just saw that this past season, that's not why the Padres were good. Now, the reason the Padres, I think what we saw this season is, one, the regression to the mean in terms of clutch situations is real. Never forget that. If you are atrocious 1 year with men on base, and especially when you have a good roster, expect a little bit of a turnaround there, right? But look at what was really helping the Padres this year. The bullpen post All-Star break, right? That was a big piece, but the first half, it was a little bit shaky, right? Remember when we were rooting for like Enyel De Los Santos and Yuki Matsui blew up so many games? They changed that at the deadline. But overall, what did you see? They made low-cost sort of moves. They traded Juan Soto in exchange for Michael King and some prospects that got you Dylan Cease. Don't get me wrong, those were big moves, but they didn't go out and try to spend their way out of it. And the reason that I always bring this up is because they already are spending a lot of money. Like, it's okay to blame a lot of teams in baseball for the lack of a payroll increase and just kind of sitting there and kicking the can down the road. Padres are actually not one of those teams. So to me, I think an insistence by anyone that the Padres need to go out and sign a Corbin Burnes for that much money. And by the way, I do like Corbin Burnes. I think he's super legit. He's won a Cy Young. I'm pretty sure he's probably going to win this one, another one too. He's going to get a big contract, and it is very, very deserved. Don't get me wrong. And the Brewers are foolish to have let go of him. Shocker that the Brewers got beat in the playoffs again, as predicted by yours truly. I just don't think a player like that makes a lot of sense for all these reasons that I'm trying to illustrate. Fangraphs projected like 6 years, 180 million, right? Like, he's going to be a really expensive player. An AAV of like 28 to 30 million. I just don't know if the Padres can really deal with that right now. There are some other pitchers, some other top tier options, right, that I want to talk about really quickly as well. Roki Sasaki is the best possible outcome, really. We've discussed this before. Given his age, given the fact that you're not going to have to give him this major deal, and given the aforementioned kind of roster, potentially salary constraints that this team might have, I think he makes the most sense. Max Fried is great too, but like, I don't see Corbin Burnes. Like, Max Fried, 5 years, 140. That's pretty tough too. Don't get me wrong. Like, I just don't know if they're going to be able to stomach that. Blake Snell, 4 years, 110 is what they're predicting for him. I think Jack Flaherty actually would be one, because I think he might actually go for less than 100 million. I think you could actually get him on a little bit of a short-term deal. So I like short-term at being, 4 years, 92 is what the Athletic predicts. I think that would make a lot of sense. But in terms of the top tier options, the dream would be Sasaki, because he's a young player that's not going to cost anything. For a team that is already spending a lot and will see more of its salary go up and more as the kind of time and the years progress. So I think that that's going to be a really big problem for the Padres, and it scares me. It really does. I think that this is why, kind of in a lot of ways, that nobody is really confident in this offseason. The vibes are a little bit messy, but I just look at this team and say, you don't have to spend a ton of money. In theory, I don't think you need the Corbin Burnes, but I don't see how you fix the issue. That would be the counterpoint to what I'm bringing up, because you traded your top pitching prospects and you lost Musgrove for the year. And then after this year, your Dylan Cease and Michael King are free agents. So I do understand why there's an incentive to spend, right? Like, don't get me wrong. I just think Burnes might be a little bit up there, but hey, there is a little bit, it's out there, and in fairness, crazier things have happened. I'm not going to be absolutely livid if they are to go out and spend 6 years on Corbin Burnes. I'm not, because that would then suggest that they're like, okay, Musgrove, Darvish, and then maybe Cash Mayfield is ready sooner than we think, right? Maybe there's a trade out there. Maybe Garrett Crochet. Everyone keeps saying like he's an automatic, like he's going to the Phillies. Maybe the Padres, who were interested in him before everybody, like it was like 2 months before the trade deadline, they were talking about this. So maybe that's actually, and they also just made the trade with Dylan Cease. So maybe they're still in on that. Maybe there's some other pitchers out there, but I would just remind everyone, Roki would be the ideal for a bunch of different reasons, but it is important to remember that They made the kind of small ball deals. They go out and sign Solano. They go out and bring back Profar. They were good this year, not because they outspent and they spent through their problems, right? I think that they've already done a lot of that, so it's not necessarily the only option that they have. But folks, that's not all in terms of reports on the Padres. We got a lot more to talk about and a lot more fun topics to talk about, including Jackson Merrill and Paul Skenes, a hypothetical question that a lot of you have been posing lately. I think it's been interesting. And we're going to talk about it, guys, in just a second. But first, I must talk to you about one of our sponsors. They've been a sponsor for a long time. It is our friends over at FanDuel. Here's the thing. Get ready, everyone. Tackle the NFL action. Yesterday was a great NFL day, and FanDuel can make it even better for you. Right now, customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, fourth quarter, maybe second quarter, maybe first quarter, I don't know. You can check out the stats, view the live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. So go again and visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started again with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And just like that, everybody, we are thriving and vibing into segment number 2 of the Monday Fun Day podcast, everybody. Let's talk about some more like free agency kind of rumors that have been going on. First of all, want to give a shout out to our guy, Nick Martinez, being brought back. I believe he accepted the qualifying offer from the Reds. Shouts to him. One of the players that, since I've been doing this podcast, that I was really wrong about. And, maybe AJ Preller and company know what they're doing. Again, he was like a small-time addition and became this really fun, like, Swiss Army type of free agent or type of pitcher where it was like sometimes if you have to, you could close. He could be a little bit of a long game, side of starter, a piggyback starter. He could go in high leverage, all that stuff. Just a solid pitcher. And also has a really good attitude and whatnot about him and just really has a lot of energy. So shouts to Nick Martinez. We love you. And honestly, I'm hoping for teams like the Reds to get better. I'm hoping for a lot of teams this offseason to do well that aren't even necessarily the Padres. I just want to not have it that all the fun players go to LA. Like there is a nightmare scenario that I really do see possibly coming true where the Dodgers go out and sign Burnes, they sign Roki, they re-sign Teoscar Hernandez, and we're all just sitting here like, this is dumb. You know what I mean? I'm not saying that it makes everything, but it is objectively, and I know that the Dodgers fans, they might still be lurking in the comments. I think it's just objectively boring for all the same players or for all the star players to go to the same team, a team that literally just won the World Series. And it's like, why do you need more? Like they have Shohei Ohtani. Like this isn't good for the sport. It's actually fun when we have more teams with more great players. I would love if Roki Sasaki went to the Mariners, right? Go to a competitive team that's not this like layup. You know what I mean? What is going on here? Like, why will it be interesting, objectively as a baseball fan, if Roki Sasaki goes to the Dodgers and they win a World Series? Why do you think, unbiased, why is that an interesting story? I do not find it interesting at all. I believe almost all the time parity is better. And I think that this has been a problem for baseball for a long time. Don't get me wrong. I just think that parity is better. And I think that initially super teams do add a little bit of an allure because everyone wants to see them lose. But I think eventually it wears off. And you've seen this with the NBA, with the Warriors, when they had Kevin Durant, for example. It just gets boring. But anyway, in terms of other free agent stuff, Ha-Seong Kim. Tim Kelly of Bleacher Report did his predictions the other day, and he actually has Ha-Seong Kim going to the Dodgers on a one-year deal. I thought that was interesting because the Dodgers did have a giant shortstop problem. And with them courting, all these international players and whatnot, I guess it would make sense. It would add up to what they've been doing lately. I think that would be a great move for them. They would be able to get a cheap player, potentially. I don't know if Kim is going to be a player because of the injury that is going to get like a big time deal. I could see him being a guy that either gets a 1-year deal, maybe some type of 3-year deal with some options. We've been seeing that a lot lately with your Cody Bellinger types. That's what I could see. But that would be really huge for them because shortstop was easily the worst thing about them last year. Like they just did not have anything. It was a black hole over there. And they were starting Miguel Rojas, who isn't a very good player. So that's not great, right? But Ha-Seong Kim to the Dodgers, that would make a lot of sense. He's a great utility player, and they have a bunch of players who move around too, so I think that would fit for them. I, of course, don't want it to happen. the thing that sucks is that something the Dodgers are going to do is happening. And in general, this division's scary this offseason. And again, it is frustrating that the Padres are like really showing you how great baseball could be. Like it is good for baseball that a team that has never spent changed ownership and is like, hey, by the way, just because it's the San Diego market, it's not an excuse. Every owner could be doing the stuff we're doing, and it's kind of embarrassed a lot of the owners in the league. Dick Montfort being one of them of the Rockies, but I'm really worried about this division. The Diamondbacks, they had one of the best offenses in all of baseball this year, and they just had like a little bit of a year from hell, right? Like Jordan Montgomery was a mess for them. Merrill Kelly got hurt. Zach Gallen started off really poorly. They just had like a lot of bad pitching and a lot of bad stuff go their way. And I think that they could be really good, and I think they could be active in the free agent market too, especially considering they might be losing Christian Walker. You've got the San Francisco Giants. They just got rid of their GM. New GM might want to make a big splash, right? Because I don't think that that's a team that's trying to rebuild. I just don't think that they've been able to. I think they've been really low-key, almost like the Cardinals, been run pretty atrociously the past few seasons, just making a lot of bad deals, but they still have some guys on their roster. They extended Matt Chapman. Jung-Ho Lee, big time player, but he got hurt like immediately, so we don't really know what he's going to be capable of, but they've still got him going next year. You still got, your Logan Webbs. I could see them go out and getting Ha-Seong Kim, a utility player that they've been needing for a long time, and was rumored to be a player that they'd trade to the Giants, the Padres, when he was still there. So that's going to be interesting, but man, Kim to the Dodgers, it also makes sense too. So you have the Dodgers, the Giants, and the D-backs I all expect to be active, especially the Dodgers and Giants, I think. I think those teams will be a little bit more active, but we'll have to see how that all sort of pans out. And in general, I haven't done like my full free agency, complete wish list for the Padres. I've got like a couple of things in mind. I think that if I had to like right now talk about it, I get this question every week, so we're gonna jump on the mailbag segment a little bit. But every week I get the question like, what are the main kind of top options for the Padres? I think that Profar, Jock Peterson, Roki Sasaki, players like that are kind of what I'm feeling for the Padres. I actually think Jock Peterson would be awesome on this team because you would then again have a great platoon, and Jock Peterson has been an incredible platoon player low-key for a long time, and he's probably just going to be like a 1 or 2 year player, and I don't think he's gone or anything like that. So you mix him up with Arise, and Arise I actually expect to be awesome next year. I think that he's going to recover from that injury and be back to the annoying 330 with a 370 on base kind of player, instead of the good offensive player he was last year, but because of the injury wasn't as good as they might have liked. But I think that that's kind of what I'm feeling right now for the Padres. I think that would be huge. It's actually really interesting that if you look around, whether it be your Tim Kelly's of Bleacher Report, whether it be some of your Fangraphs projections, whether it be New York Times, The Athletic, like not a lot of people are projecting big things for the Padres this offseason, and I think that's weird. Like, has no one watched what this team has been capable of? I understand the salary constraints that I've been really worried about too, with the payroll and whether or not new ownership is going to be as aggressive. But I just don't understand this idea that like, oh, the Milwaukee Brewers are going to make a big signing. Like, what are you talking about? They never do. I just don't understand some of the predictions we've seen. But in general, guys, let's get to it. Let's start with the mailbag segment. Not a lot of questions from you guys this week, let me tell you. But we did get a few. First up, from Paul Holden on Twitter. Will the Padres win the 2025 series against the Rockies? Paul Holden, longtime friend of the podcast. He hosts Locked on Rockies. He does a kick-ass job. Go check that out. Let me tell you, man. Padres Rockies is like one of the dumbest things that I've had to watch over these past few years, because the past few years, they've kind of gone against, I always like talking about my regression to the mean and my law of averages. It just doesn't make sense that the Padres have been so against the Rockies for so many years now. They obviously were very good this year. Like, they were a great team overall, but it's just weird how much that team looks like a playoff team. And frankly, I actually think that the Rockies might be a little bit better. I think that they're starting to show at least some signs. I think the Chris Bryant thing is just a nuclear disaster for them, but they've at least been like showing signs with Tovar, Brenton Doyle, maybe Nolan Jones has a bounce back. He was so bad last year that I don't kind of believe it. There's got to be a middle ground between his rookie year and what he did this past year. Like, I think they're going to be frisky. I think they'll be a little bit better, but overall, I think the problem with them is that the pitching and bullpen is just going to get them killed. So I don't really see them making any improvements there. But next year, man, we'll have to see, because the Padres everything went well for them this year. And I got a couple comments about that too. So I'm really curious to see if next year might be a little bit of a comeback down to earth moment, and we're going to be really questioning the future of this franchise. It's scary times, man. It's optimistic, energetic, but also a little bit scary times for Padres fans, let me tell you. But before we answer some more questions, including the best question of all, Jackson Merrill versus Paul Skenes, we just need to take a second, guys, and talk about another one of our sponsors, and it is our friends over at... They're the title sponsor. You guys remember, it is Game Time, folks. We love, love, love Game Time, guys. Let me talk to you about the hype and the atmosphere of it games. You know, if you want to go to Madison Square Garden, you know, if you're me out in Jersey, you get the celebrity sightings, you know what I mean? There's the sound from the court, all that sort of stuff. And if you want to attend NBA games, you can do that, and Game Time helps you out. They have a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. It filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Also, they got you covered with other stuff too. It's not just basketball. It's also baseball. It's also football. It's also women's basketball. It's also hockey. It's everything. And concerts, comedy shows, theater, all sorts of stuff. Game Time has you covered, man. It's really great over at Game Time. It's fantastic. They've got the super deal. They've got curated deals all over the place to make it easier to find the best sort of option for your particular experience. It is great. All in pricing. They have, you know, zone deals. They have flash deals. So like, you know, closer to the game, if you find out that you're free, you're not going to the happy hour after work with your coworkers and whatnot, you can go attend the game. It'll be even lower as you get closer to game time. So it's great. That's why they call it Game Time. It's a fantastic app. And if you download the app, download the Game Time app, guys. You create an account and you can use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, but again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. And just like that, we are thriving and vibing into the final segment of this show. Let me tell you guys, not a lot of news this past week, but it's okay. We're going to push through. And I'm also going to tell you guys about what we're planning this week. Firstly, also have to say, I just got an alert that the Astros are changing the ballpark naming rights from Minute Maid Park to become Daikin Park. Daikin? Daikin? Well, that's awful. Anyway, Minute Maid sounds so much better. It's such a better name, but whatever. Anyway, in terms of the rest of these questions and comments, guys, let's continue reading. I got a lot of stuff from Dodger stuff. You know, I know a guy said Sasaki will go to the Dodgers where Ohtani and Yamamoto will be for years. Darvish will be gone in San Diego. I don't know what that comment exactly means because Yu Darvish is actually projected to be on this team for a long time. And I still kind of maintain my belief that they're at least a little bit of a dark horse. As another comment says, from @XMurdochX, I don't know if that's a Daredevil reference. The Padres are a dark horse for sure, but everything is pointing to the Dodgers. World Series champs, fellow countrymen on the team, one of the biggest marketing opportunities. Dodgers pitching staff is one of the best. They're great unlocking a pitcher's potential. And then 6-man rotation. Japanese players are used to a 6-man rotation, something that's often overlooked. I think that the Padres are capable of doing 6-man rotation, but I get what you're saying because of the fact that they'll probably get Glasnow back. You know, you're going to have Yamamoto. You're going to have some other pitchers in that rotation. You know, maybe they bring back Walker Buehler. That's another one potentially. And then you'll have Ohtani pitching. I could see a world in which they get that. But overall, I do think that it is worth noting that the Padres have some stuff for them because they really need Sasaki more than the Dodgers do. And also, Preller name dropped him not too long ago, kind of out of nowhere, which makes me hopeful. And there was really all those kind words that the agent said. So I would not give up hope, but don't get really wedded to this, I think is what I would say. But again, that's just me. At Cam Wordplay, if Sasaki goes to the Dodgers, it looks more and more like the Padres missed their shot at a World Series ring when they had the Dodgers on the ropes and came up empty. But anything can happen. I agree. I've been feeling this way. That's why the playoff loss was so devastating, because you really had them right where you wanted them. They had the juice. I think easily, out of the remaining field, the Padres were the most complete team. I think their lineup top to bottom was better. I think that their starting pitching was better. But unfortunately, Dodgers got right at the wrong time. We saw what happened there. And I'm just wondering whether or not so many things went right this year. You know what I mean? You have so many walk-off wins, so many close game wins. Dylan Cease throws a no-hitter. That's been forgotten about. And the fact that you got what you got out of a Jurickson Profar and a Donovan Solano, it feels like, is that going to happen again? I don't know. So we'll have to see. But I do emphasize with that a lot. Another comment from @Wyatt Bunting. dash W8K says double play rate was worse in Major League Baseball too, in reference to Manny Machado. Yeah, talked about this on Friday, that his defense was a little bit up and down, not awful. A lot of it was bad at the beginning of the year, but it was definitely not the usual plus. And I like that usually, you know, Manny Machado is a pretty plus defender, adding a lot of value. He did it last year, that kind of salvaged his season in a lot of ways, but this past year, not as aces. Had a lot of highlight plays, don't get me wrong. The potential's still there, but it wasn't the best as I could hope for. And I did not realize that double play rate. That also probably has something to do with the fact that they didn't always have consistent defenders in the infield, whether it be Arise playing first base, except for the playoffs. He was really bad defensively. Jake Cronenworth moving around. Xander Bogaerts not being in there all the time. So they had their moments. Remember, like, Mason McCoy was playing shortstop or third a couple times this year. Like, they had a weird... The defense of the Padres this year was, like, the only thing that was bad. They just didn't have a good defense this year. It was kind of unfortunate. But that's not all, of course, guys. Continuing to read, let me tell you. Moving on, at Life Just a Phase, signing with the Dodgers would be partly about money. Just check the endorsements both Ohtani and Yamamoto got in addition to their salaries. That won't come in an SD market. I don't know where everyone's getting this necessarily, at least in terms of Yamamoto. I see the Under Armour, or not the Under Armour, the New Balance commercial with Ohtani every 5 minutes. It's gone off a little bit lately, but yeah, okay, that for sure. But I think Ohtani's also just huge. I don't think that that's because he was on the Dodgers that he got extra endorsements. And I got a couple comments saying that, by the way. I don't see it. You know, I don't know where everybody's getting this idea that Shohei Ohtani like only got that because of the Dodgers. I really don't see it. I think that overall, that he's just so big it wouldn't have mattered. And it's not like I've seen Yamamoto be placed on like the top of every billboard that I've seen, right? So I think the Padres could absolutely still get you big endorsements if you're a big player here. Probably bigger with the Dodgers, but don't sleep on the Padres. There's a reason everybody keeps signing here, guys. It's not like there's no reason for it. Next comment, though, comes from my guy, Mr. Troy San Diego. Just want to clarify something. He asked about Jackson Merrill, whether or not he's going to win Rookie of the Year. I thought he already won. He said, yes, that was the Sporting News thing that a lot of Padres fans were taking and running with. The Sporting News, no offense to them, but they aren't the main award that gets like tracked on Baseball Reference that you're going to see pop up. That's the BBWAA. That is the Baseball Writers Association of America. That is the one that the finalists were announced for when I talked about this last week. So just to clarify for everybody, that race is still going on. I'm not saying that he can't win. I'm not saying that the Sporting News Award doesn't matter, but the main one you guys, we all look for is the Baseball Writers Association of America. For better or worse, when it comes to that. At Jim Johnson 724 says, as a Dodgers fan, let me say this, whatever team he lands in, I wish Sasaki a long and injury-free career full of accomplishments and success. Good luck next year, Padres and D-back fans. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it very much. And then lastly, we got a couple comments. Rama Murdy, my guy, 9938, said, sorry guys, but Merrill is better than Skenes as the NL Rookie of the Year. And then Adrian Ramirez says, Merrill had a better year as well. Here's the thing. I actually saw on Twitter, going around a lot, at least Padres Twitter, I should say, Jackson Merrill for Paul Skenes. Like, would you do that? The Padres would definitely do that. And a lot of Padres fans were dunking on him for saying that. It was just some random commenter that I saw. I actually think it's a fascinating question. Fascinating question. Would you trade? And frankly, I think both teams say no. If this hypothetical trade, which would not happen, if it was Jackson Merrill, Paul Skenes, I think both teams say no. But let me give you both sides for a second, because I actually think that this is a really, really fun question. On the one hand, you had a 5-win outfielder at 21 years old who played a new position for the first time, was absolutely paramount to their success with winning close games, especially, you know, making all those records, playing all that, an incredible hit tool, looks like an amazing player. He has the same issue that all young players have, which is like how much of his is legit. He doesn't have a good walk rate. His expected weight on base was a lot lower. Like, there still are questions for the guy. And then you've also got, you know, the situation with Paul Skenes where is it totally fully legit? But I will say that with Paul Skenes, I think that it's totally possible that next year he is straight up the best pitcher in baseball. That, I think, is the difference. I don't see a world in which Jackson Merrill next year is the best outfielder in baseball, right? And I think that's a little bit of the difference. Then you would also argue, well, he's a center fielder, and the Padres have really needed a center fielder for a long time. And in general, he plays every day. That's always going to be more valuable. Agreed. But if I told you Paul Skenes will be the number one starting pitcher in baseball next year, and he wins the Cy Young for the National League, and Jackson Merrill is a 4.5 win player, That's not something that I dismiss outright. I actually think it's a really fascinating question. And I keep going back and forth because another thing to bring up is, yeah, I don't like, it's not a guarantee or anything, but it is true that we have seen an epidemic in baseball with starting pitchers getting hurt, particularly the starting pitchers like Skenes, who are young and they throw really, really hard. You know what I mean? This guy has one of the highest fastball velocities in the sport. He's just one of the hardest throwing pitchers in the sport. He's amazing. Don't get me wrong, but I think that that is a fair concern to be like, Jackson Merrill could get hurt. Knock on wood. That could happen. But with starting pitchers like Skenes, it has felt like it's not a question of if they get hurt, but a question of when, because we keep seeing that guys that throw hard like this just get hurt. And it's one of the problems of Major League Baseball. Jeff Passan has talked about this. It's why he says that we should limit the amount of roster spots for pitchers, which would then incentivize less hard velocity, right? And instead it would be guys need to know I need to last through this game because we don't have 17 relievers that the team can go to. I personally think Pandora's box has already been opened, and that if you do that, hitters are already caught up, right? Like hitters are now used to hitting high velocity stuff. So if you have guys throwing less, I don't know if that's always going to necessarily amount to something. I know there's a huge difference between throwing 95 and 96 versus 100, but even still, it still worries me. So I don't know if that would necessarily pan out, but I don't know. I would like to know your guys' thoughts. A lot of people are going to say Jackson Merrill. I understand that, but I really think that it's a fair question. I really do, because also keep in mind, the Padres need starting pitching. We talked about this in the first segment. They gave up Dylan Lesko and Robbie Snelling. At least one of them I think might turn out pretty good. So you don't have a lot of starting pitching depth, right? Especially past this year without King and C. So you're wondering, you get this young, controllable pitcher, you know, for Jackson Merrill. Is that something that you do? And especially if you consider, hey, you know what? Do we have enough offense already? Can we find enough offense to kind of be good again? There's a reason why you're supposed, at least theoretically, you have your Bogarts, you have your Machado, you have your Tatis. Like, you have really high caliber players on here. Jake Cronenworth, Luis Arraez. Is that enough? You know what I mean? I think it's a really fun question. I've talked about a lot how I think this Rookie of the Year race is impossibly close. I do not think that there's any right answer. I am totally fine with people voting Skenes. I'm totally fine for voting Jackson Merrill. Only thing that I don't like is when people are like, it's obvious who the winner is. It's like, no, it's not, guys. It's actually really hard for me to come up with a verdict on this one. But overall, would you do that trade? I actually don't know. I don't know. I think no. Because I do think that just having that center fielder out there who's going to impact every day is a little bit bigger. But it's, again, I need to emphasize, he might literally just be the best pitcher in starting baseball next year. Like, I could totally see it. Forget National League. I think all of baseball. I think that's totally possible. He was a Cy Young candidate this year, guys. It's just that he didn't get called up immediately. So I don't know. I know the Pirates also don't want to do it because he's a marketing, blessing for them, right? Like, Bob Nunn ain't got to spend any money, but he's got Paul Skenes bringing it in for him because everyone's talking about him. He's on College Game Day, all that stuff. So he's a bigger star in terms of celebrity status. But overall, it's a good question, guys. But that about does it for the main content of today's show. Let me just talk to you about what we're doing in the future. Tomorrow's episode, I'm giving my thoughts on Anthony Santander, a popular free agent pick for the Padres. We've seen a lot of reports, articles, opinions from a lot of Padres fans and media content people about Anthony Santander, and I'm going to talk about how I feel potentially about him being on this Padres team to replace, Pearson Profar or to be another DH, whatever it is. Talking about him, how I feel about him. We got a crossover with Locked On Rangers host Bryce Padre for Wednesday, and then either Thursday or Friday, we're doing a chat with Arm Layton about Roki Sasaki, why it makes him so amazing, what he thinks is going to happen with him, and let me tell you, Arm's bullish on the guy, and Arm doesn't miss. So that's going to be a lot of fun, guys, and then probably we're going to do a player review for Jurickson Profar, whether it be Thursday or Friday. I don't know whether Arm will be Thursday or Friday, so that's the schedule coming out. But guys, hopefully that sounds enticing. Hopefully you'll keep it locked in here on Locked On Padres. But until next time, stay safe and, of course, stay faithful. My Friar Faithful homies, take care.